Hi, welcome back to CS170. I just want to run through a couple of admin type of stuff. Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. Um, so you can tell this week was blank, although I know some people were working on some of the assignments and whatnot, so they were sending me emails. But here we are. In this week, we're going to be covering chapters 11 and 22. Um, my PowerPoints are kind of loaded up. I'll start running through it. A lot of pages, but don't worry. I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time walking through each one. A lot of them are just kind of like pictures and whatnot. So I think I mentioned this earlier. I think for these couple of sections or chapters, I should say, um, mainly you'll be looking at, kind of like different definitions and examples and whatnot. Um, so I think in some ways it's kind of almost like at the beginning of the class. So in terms of how you prepare for the exam, for this third section that we've been covering, this green area here, it's really about understanding all of the spreadsheet functions, understanding, all those key concepts that I've highlighted in my past lectures. Um, and, similar to how we've done with JavaScript or the HTML, you'll see like snippets of code. It could be like a VLOOKUP, it could be a function, um, and, you'll be asked to explain something about it, right? Like maybe there's an issue with it. Maybe there's something that's not working with it. And if you've been doing the assignments, you've probably run to a lot of those things already. So hopefully that would help you to answer those questions quickly. Um, and then, stuff like this for chapter 11, 22, and 12 here, it's kind of like, read through the book. A lot of the stuff will be in the book. Uh, take some notes. I've tried to provide some examples in the slides that I have. And really it'd just be like, as you write down, take the notes or whatever, that'll be good reference for you. It'll help to reinforce in your mind these concepts, and then you'll be able to apply them for the exam. And don't forget, for the final exam, obviously there's the second chance policy. So for some of you who are hoping to do better with this, if you do better with these first couple of sections in the exam, that'll be applied to those exams that you took early in the year, exam 1 and exam 2. Okay, so I think what I'll try to do is I'll try to go through like the slides to cover these materials, and I've already told the TAs to make sure they get their recordings out for the recitations, so you can get going on the recitation project. Now, in terms of you preparing for the exam, I know like we'll be putting out some review stuff, whether it's old exams and whatnot. Obviously, you've taken the first 2 exams already. Go ahead and take a look at all of that material and see if there's things that you're still not clear on, and send me an email or send the TAs emails. Um, and generally, in case it hasn't been clear to you, the TAs are generally spending time working on your assignments, grading them and whatnot, and of course doing the recitations. And this week we'll be talking about the recitation project. But in terms of reviewing for the exam, I think all of us will be available to help with that. So if you're looking at a particular issue, particular problem, maybe a code snippet or a concept, send me an email or send the TAs emails, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as we can, so that you can be well prepared for the finals. And if there's enough people that's asking the same questions, I'll try to cut a video for it also. Okay, so do try and take advantage of that. I want you to have as much examples and material at your fingertips to be ready for the finals, right? So just let us know, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as we can, or we'll cut a video as soon as we can to explain that concept. Okay, so do keep that in mind. So this is the PowerPoint presentation here. You can see up here it's like 49 pages. So I'm not going to go through that in this one video. And like I said, it's just like pictures and whatnot. Don't like worry. I'm not going to go exhaustively through each page here. And I'll upload it as usual so you can reference it. And before I do that, let me very quickly come back to my Excel sheet here. So I just happen to be working on this because this is getting close to the end of the year, and I have to pull these things together. But I just wanted to kind of give people some idea of some different things that I think is a very common usage of Excel. So I'm actually working on like a computer program to actually suck all this information in and do some slicing and dicing of it. But the reality is it's probably quicker and easier just to whip stuff up in Excel. Okay, so really, if you look at this, this is just an example of something where, this is like a real estate sheet where there's a whole bunch of stuff going on, right? It could be like, paying back loans. It could be, paying electric bill, water bill, maintenance people, property manager, whatever, like all kinds of stuff going on. And each of those will have an entry in here. And basically all you care about is like, the property that it's tied to, who's paying, who's the receiver of the payment, what kind of category it is, the amount, and the date, right? The dates are important because whichever date you happen to fall in will make a difference from a tax perspective, let's say, or an accounting perspective, okay? But, the interesting thing here is like I just have this one sheet which has all of my entries, but then I have all these other sheets that are basically looking up those values and doing all kinds of different reporting or calculation on it. So in some ways, this is almost like a database, right? This is a table, it's a database, just like when you create your pivot tables and whatnot. It'll go to different sheets or whatever, but it's all referring to your master set of data. So I would say this entries is sort of my master set of data, okay? And let me kind of go over here. Right, so this is one of the properties here, and I was just messing around to get like the interest and principal here, right? You need to put this kind of stuff in for your taxes and whatnot, okay? Or in some ways, you're also evaluating the profitability of a property too, okay? And you can see stuff here, right? You can see different things here for the taxes and whatnot, okay? So I didn't put everything in here, but let's take a look at this guy here. Let's say for the interest, well, you guys have been working on this, right? You can see the sum. All right, and basically, if you look, I mean, I'm not going to go exhaustively into this, right? But you can see, look, here's entries, right? And what's it looking for? You can see it's looking for these type of entries here, right? Where it says Bouvier, right? Like so, okay? So if I go back to here, okay, so basically I can go in here and I just happen to put a filter in here for Bouvier here. And basically I know it's pulling all of this information here. If I come back to here, I look again, right? So I look at entries, you look at the columns, right? So it's looking at the L column, right? The B column, K column, so on and so forth, right? And let me go back to here. Entries, I clicked the wrong tab here, right? So you can see all the corresponding columns here, and you can see this right here, this reference here. So it's looking for these dates here, like so Jan 20, Feb 20, right? Like that, okay? And so let's say B2, I mean BK2 I should say, right? So BK2 is looking for, so Bouvier left today, BK2, okay? So that's the reference here to BK2, okay? And then within that, it's looking, let's say in column H. So where's my column H at? Here, right? So you see column H, and it's looking for these guys here, right? So let me say this is looking for January, right? So it's looking for this January 20th here, and that's where it's going to find that, right? And it's looking for the category for principal and interest. In this case, it's looking for the interest. So that's how it picks up this value here, okay? So anyway, you get the general idea. you have all kinds of these type of things. So you can see each of my different tabs, and I have a gazillion tabs here. All of these different tabs are basically doing references to this entries here. Okay. In this case, it was doing a sum, right? So I could have had multiple entries here. Let's say I decide to split this, you know, for whatever reason, like 400 and 465 or something like that. It would know to sum that together, right? So I could have multiple entries in here. It doesn't matter as long as it has this entry here on the date, right, which is what it's looking up, and the interest here, right, and the fact that it's a Bouvier. Okay, and you know, similarly, you can do things with VLOOKUPs. There's other types of references, but it's all basically all of these guys here are pointing to this master list of entries here. Okay, so anyway, I think I probably spent more time on this than I should have anyway. But I just wanted to give everyone like a little bit of example of different types of things that a lot of people do on spreadsheets, right? So they'll basically almost organize this to like some sort of like database. That's a very simplistic database, albeit, but it's a database. And then have all kinds of slicing and dicing, filtering of the data, looking up data, to produce things. In this case, what I'm doing is trying to come up with some information so I can take care of my taxes at the end of this year. Okay. All right, let me close this up. That's not what we need to talk about, but I just want to share that from an Excel standpoint. I'm sure all of you have done stuff with Excel or will be doing stuff with Excel for your future assignments. Okay. All right. So here we are, Chapter 11, Social Implications of IT. All right, so there's a couple of different things going on, you know, and I try to show some of the positive and negative, and I think the book kind of shows a fairly balanced view of it. Shows some of the positive things and some of the challenging things, I should say, to worry about with these things. Not everything is perfect, so I think we try to present a fairly balanced view on the opportunity and also the challenges with these things. So here's one idea, crowdsourcing, right? That's an important thing given like our ability to basically go peer-to-peer, access a lot of people. Crowdsourcing, you know, is one example of like what's changed with the growth of the internet, social media, and essentially what I consider peer-to-peer interactions. Okay. You know, and this infrastructure has also provided the opportunity in terms of electronic payments. So that gets into, and that's been something that's been growing over the years. So that's part of, you know, stuff that you see with the big players like Apple and whatnot, trying to get into things like electronic payments. Okay. Now, the other area that's very sensitive now, and it's really a global type of thing, is intellectual property. Okay, so whether it's software or music or movies or whatever, right? There's a lot of stuff that is a challenge, right? Because it's just out there, and you know, it's very easily for people to come along and quote unquote steal it, copy it, whatever. So intellectual property is a really big challenge in this day and age. There's this idea of open source software. Okay, and I'll kind of go more into that, but that's a pretty interesting concept. You know, copyright on the web kind of relates to this intellectual property topic discussion. And same thing when you get into the fair use, public domains, Creative Commons, right? That's all kind of related there. Okay. So let me just go for this video. Let me just go for crowdsourcing and talk about what that's about. Okay, so there's a couple of different things where you look at crowdsourcing to achieve a certain outcome, right? It could be to raise money for a worthy charity or a worthy cause. In this case, we're talking about crowdsourcing to maybe solve an interesting problem, a challenging problem. And let me go through a couple of examples here. Okay, well, and so here's the definition, right? It's crowdsourcing to solve a problem, achieve a goal. Okay, This particular lecture, I'm going to happen to talk about solving some problems. Okay, so the example that's always really given out there is, right off the bat, is always something like Wikipedia. Okay, so for those of you that don't know, Wikipedia is, you know, kind of like the crowdsourcing equivalent of like an encyclopedia, right? If people actually even use encyclopedias anymore, right? So it's basically getting a whole bunch of information. So you can imagine how this worked in the old days. You have, uh, this set of knowledge that goes into these encyclopedias, and it's like A, B, C, D, whatever, right? Um, and some of it is fairly static, right? Like some of the historical type of things and whatnot. There may be some things that have changed, right? Maybe Pluto is no longer a planet, or we've introduced some new animal species or whatever, right? But a lot of that kind of stuff is fairly static, and then you'll have like some updates that every single year there'll be some updates, and either people are ordering a new set of encyclopedia, they'll get a whole new set, or the people that have existing ones, they'll get like updates to it. Okay, um, but with this advent of Wikipedia, basically instead of having like whoever, right, the big encyclopedia maker used to be like Encyclopedia Britannica, right? Um, now basically the idea is that everybody has a whole bunch of information that they can contribute into Wikipedia, um, and you know you have to work out some way to have like some sort of gatekeeper type of functionality to kind of review these things, but ultimately everyone can just contribute knowledge into Wikipedia, and it's constantly getting updated, so it's always staying quote unquote up to date. Now, whether it's up to date to really all of the information that is necessary, appropriate, or whatever, that's a different story. Um, but certainly, in terms of updating um, the knowledge that historically has been updated by people who wrote encyclopedias or maintain encyclopedias, um, probably much more cost effective, much more up to date, um, and just keeping up to like current changes in more of a real-time status, um, and it's been a success, right? So Wikipedia is always pointed out as like one of the big successes from a crowdsourcing standpoint. Okay, um, so yeah, here's the different points that they talk about in terms of like the pros or the advantages that you might see from crowdsourcing, right? So, there's like very big problems, right, that are out there that has basically just large scale. Could be like a lot of permutations, just volume of data or whatever. Uh, and it's just too large for even a company like Microsoft or whatever to be able to do by themselves with their staff of people. And if you're able to source that from a larger group of people, you get a chance to attack some of these big problems. You know, Diversity of thinking, right, to a certain extent, and you know, you reduce like the overhead, right? It's basically right down to the people who just contribute. There's not like this whole hierarchy of management that's on top of it to review the data, make sure it's good and whatnot. It just like gets done, gets put out there. And the other thing is, it's kind of like whoever is contributing to it, or everybody's contributing to it, you know, it makes it a product that people want to use, right? So you want to get some benefit out of it, so you contribute into it, or a pool of people contribute into it, and you get some benefit out of it. Um, so it's almost like you're making something that you want to buy, right? So you're creating like this marketing around it because everybody's working on contributing to it and getting something out of it. And you have so many people that you're throwing at it. If it's done right, you can have faster problem solving. And because it's made by the customers, it's essentially almost like you're saying it's self-serve for the customer. Um, it's centered around the customer, right? So it's what they want to know about or what they want to learn more about. Um, that's where you're going to see uh, the product basically evolve to the contributor's needs, and the contributor happens to be a customer also. So all kinds of fits together like that. Okay. All right, so this is kind of reiterating that point about getting the different approaches to problem solving. So you get the wider set of people thinking about a problem, participating in a problem solving exercise, and you get all of that contributing hopefully to a more robust solution. Okay. Okay. So they talk about here as the, here the Human Genome Project. Um, I kind of I kind of think at the beginning the Human Genome Project wasn't really like a big crowdsourcing thing. I think maybe later on, as more and more people, as the technology became more and more accessible to people, that may have become more true. But at the beginning, I don't know if it was that true that it was a crowdsourcing type of thing. And that I think that's an interesting aspect of this. It's not like crowdsourcing, just popped onto the scene. Um, you know, it's been kind of evolving, and it kind of depends on like, um, well, number one, of course, you had to have everybody on the internet, so everybody had to have access to it. But at the same time, there's like certain things, certain technology that as memory became cheaper, CPU cycles became cheaper, processors became more powerful, and all of that. Um, that allows more decentralization. That allows more people to have access and to be able to do certain things, right? When it wasn't at the right price point, yeah, we might have had the internet, but certain things were quite expensive, and it wasn't just quite there for everybody to be able to contribute in what I think of as crowdsourcing. So yeah, in the later stages for the Human Genome Project, probably the technology is more accessible, so it would be more truly crowdsourcing. But at the beginning, I'm not really sure if that's really the case. It's almost like right now when you have like the printers that are able to print objects, and those things are getting better, more cost effective, and more accessible to the average person. Um, things like printing your T-shirts and all custom T-shirts and all that kind of stuff. You know, theoretically, that stuff was available to people, but it was not cheap, and it wasn't as sophisticated and as it is now, and it's going to get more sophisticated and more cheaper. So that it will definitely approach what we think of in terms of crowdsourcing things. Okay. Um, so yeah, this like kind of like crowdsourcing and a gamification type of thing, right? So they have things like this, trying to get people involved with global warming, in this case talking about CO2. How do we capture that, reduce that going into the atmosphere, stuff like that. Um, you have this. This is like something put out by NASA. Um, so in terms of robots, you've probably seen a lot of these with MIT and whatnot. So talking about, basically providing capabilities for people to be able to, or I should say robots, I should say not people, being able to operate in fairly challenging terrains, uh, with a pretty big communication lag, right? Even right now, if we send a signal to Mars, which is probably the planet that a lot of people talk about, it's not instantaneous. It's certainly not like us doing a chat or Zoom or something. Um, it's going to be a lag, and being able to give instructions to a robot remotely, or hopefully reduce the number of instructions you have to give them, let them operate autonomously, is a challenge. So you have things like that, which people are trying to put out there as contests, gamification, to try to get people to help with contributing designs, whether it's like getting something out there that will get out there, it's not too heavy, will be fairly autonomous and robust, be able to land, right? Drop it on there without having like, huge amount of equipment to get it out there, stuff like that. There's this other bit, crowdsourcing with tagging images. And you see that with a lot of different things, not just for this Martian thing. There's a lot of things for machine learning. When you do like the CAPTCHA, right? There'll be things for words or text that is very hard for a computer to figure out what that is. So they'll put it out there and have like humans essentially kind of work at it and say, oh, that looks like a certain character, like a certain word or whatever, right? It could be like old textbooks, or not old textbooks, old books that people are having trouble looking at and interpreting it, and just put it out there and have people try to figure it out. And based on a whole bunch of people looking at it, they kind of say, oh, okay, it's whatever word or something like that. So in terms of machine learning, a lot of it, not all of it, right? They're doing some different things with machine learning that doesn't need as much information to feed into it. But a lot of machine learning needs a lot of information, right? And that information, kind of, you need people to help tag that information so that the machine doesn't go haywire and learn something that's totally like out in left field, right? So there's a bit of like with certain types of machine learning, you need to have things like this. So tagging images is a common type of thing. So they mentioned participants getting a sense of satisfaction from contributing to a project. In this case, we're talking about like Mars and whatnot. But like I said, there's actually a lot of work to be done in that space for machine learning, where you have people tagging different bits of information to make sure the machine learning is not like going out into left field. Okay. Kind of see I'm already getting on a half hour already, so we kind of work a little bit faster to get this crowdsourcing section done. So the folded game, right? This is like folding proteins and stuff like that. So this is pretty interesting, right? So talking about like finding a structure for proteins, and they talk about the AIDS virus solved in 3 weeks. They're actually doing something similar, or they have done something similar for COVID. So I took a screenshot of this back in March, and they're essentially trying to apply similar principle for things on breaking down the COVID virus. Okay, so you see, next thing is crowdfunding. So I'm going to stop the video here, and then I'll get into crowdfunding for my next video. Okay, thank you.